Still waiting on an extension for Tristan Wirfs. So when should we expect that to come down? That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this Monday episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers as deputy editor of SB Nation's BucsNation.com. Here with you every Monday through Friday, along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message, no ads or hashtags or any nonsense like that. Just legitimate one-on-one text conversations with me. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Todd Bowles has some glowing words about a first-year starter, while Liam Coen has some interesting things to say about Graham Barton. But let's start with a question I got from longtime everydayer Mad Dog. Mad Dog, always appreciate you, devoted listener to the show. But he messaged me and he said, when should we as fans start to worry about Tristan Wirfs' extension? When do you believe a deal will be done? Mad Dog, that's a great question, and it's something we talked about quite a bit in the month of June and heading into the beginning of July. And after the Antoine Winfield Jr. deal got done ahead of the franchise tag deadline, and I kind of thought that this deal was going to be done close to around training camp, which starts, Veterans Report Tuesday. The rookies reported on Monday. But I'm going to start by saying this. There is no need to worry or panic quite yet. As I just mentioned, veterans report to training camp on Tuesday, and then it's another 18 days until the first preseason game. We're just under 7 weeks away from the start of the season, so there's a lot of time between now and then. I do not see this being a situation where Tristan isn't participating and he's kind of a hold in until a new deal is reached. He kind of did that in mandatory minicamp where he was in attendance, but he didn't participate in anything. Here, I think you're going to have Tristan in attendance, in pads, on the field, doing all the work that he needs to and is expected to. The cloud of an extension is going to be hanging over his head a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be enough for him to sit out and kind of demand a new deal before he participates. We know that this is still a high priority for Jason Licht. It was one of the highest priorities of the offseason for him, but this was one where Licht had the most flexibility in terms of time. Evans, Baker, Levante, those guys all had to get done prior to, or at least close to, the start of free agency. Otherwise, they could have been with a different team. Antoine Winfield Jr., he got the franchise tag. There was still a deadline to get that long-term deal done. Otherwise, he was going to play on the franchise tag. And then you're dealing with a situation where he might have been upset and pursued free agency next year. Tristan still has the final year of his rookie deal to go. So the Bucs had the ability to wait on this one just a little bit. Once we kind of got into July, it seemed to me like this was going to be a situation where the negotiations were going to pick back up around the start of camp. Everyone's back in the building. Things are ramping up. Okay, let's go ahead and get this all worked out. Tristan is going to likely be a top 3 paid left tackle in the league, might even end up being number 1. I don't think there's really much question or debate about where he would fall in terms of highest paid tackles in the NFL. The question is going to be in the structure of how it's paid out, what's guaranteed, and then finding that combination that works both for the Buccaneers in terms of what their cap situation is, what their restrictions are, the players that they're still going to need to re-sign, bring in, those kinds of things, and then what works best for Tristan. I don't think there's going to be a lot of hardball on either side. It's going to come down to terms and structure. Now, is Tristan going to want a 5-year deal while Jason only wants to do 4? Or is it maybe the reverse? Does Jason want to look to lock up Tristan Wirfs for the next 5 or 6 years and know that he may be the highest paid left tackle starting in 2025, but by time 2029 rolls around, now you have one of the best left tackles in the NFL, and he's probably only the 5th or 6th highest paid. Now all of a sudden Jason has a deal, and Tristan isn't being paid as what he is, which is the best, tackle in the NFL. But then, of course, maybe Tristan only wants to sign for 4 years, play that game a little bit, right? Have a little gamesmanship. He does a 4-year deal, so that way he gets another mega contract before he turns 30, and then could wind up being the highest paid tackle or getting the highest tackle contract twice before he turns 30 years old. So there's a lot that's going to go into this, but I think now is when the real serious conversations are going to begin, and you're likely looking at the end of August as kind of the expected range. I think they get a deal done before the regular season officially begins. But here's the other half of that coin. If I were, Bucs fans, I wouldn't worry too much if week 1 rolls around and there still isn't a deal. However, you may want to start to worry if we're getting into late October, early November, and there's still no deal. If we have eclipsed half of the NFL season and there's still no extension for Tristan, that's when the antenna are going to go up. Some alarm bells are going to start to go off. No extension by then, to me, means that negotiations have taken a turn for the worse, and now you're at risk of an upset player being done trying to work things out, and he's going to start looking to the free agent market, where he's likely going to be the highest paid free agent in 2025. Think back to Mike Evans last year. He cut off contract talks when the season began and just focused on playing. Then it was essentially a buzzer beater that got the deal with Mike Evans done to bring him back to Tampa. You don't want to see that happen with a 25-year-old franchise left tackle. Teams will be lined up out the door and around the block to sign him, and there's going to be a bidding war for his services, and it might even reach the point that Wirfs can end up being the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. Left tackles with the talent and the time of Tristan Wirfs, those are one of the most elite commodities you can get in the NFL. After quarterback, it's left tackle. Like, those are the 2 most important positions. Tristan Wirfs, if he reaches free agency, will get broken off. Jason Licht does not want it to get to that point. Bucs fans don't want it to get to that point. I'm sure Tristan, to some extent, would like to have the long-term security of a deal sooner than later. So that's really kind of where I am on this entire ordeal. Far, far, far from panic time. Really, I wouldn't even be worried, not even slightly worried at this stage. You're looking at some time before the season. Maybe you have a little anxiousness kick in if a deal isn't done by time week 1 rolls around. But if there's no deal by the creamsicle game against the Falcons in week 8, late October, that's when you should start to genuinely grow concerned that something in the negotiations has gone wrong and the Bucs could be at risk of losing Tristan Wirfs. Todd Bowles is speaking rather highly of a first-year starter. That is next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But after the playoffs wound down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Right now, the Dodgers are the favorites to win the World Series at plus 320, while the Tampa Bay Rays are struggling and sitting at plus 15,000. If you want to get in on some NHL or NFL odds early, the Chiefs and Niners are tied atop the Super Bowl odds at plus 600, while the Bucs are at plus 5,500. Meanwhile, the Edmonton Oilers are the favorites for the Stanley Cup at plus 850. Then you have the defending champion Florida Panthers at plus 950. Then the Tampa Bay Lightning down at plus 2,000. Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listener review every day. Everydayers, make sure you are coming back tomorrow. I am going to, how can I put this nicely? I'm going to roast a very prominent talking head in sports media. I'll talk a little bit about that coming up in just a moment. But in the meantime, if you want to hear the latest news from around all sports, the NBA, NHL free agency happening, you got the MLB in full swing, you got the NFL news because the NFL never sleeps, and the Olympics about to start. But you want more than the national narratives, and you want the biggest stories without fake manufactured screaming. Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without the screaming. Locked On Sports today is streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Todd Bowles was on the Sick podcast with JC Allen and talked about cornerback Zyon McCollum. McCollum, as you all know, did a fantastic job filling in for Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean last season when they missed time due to injuries. And he did so well that the Bucs were confident in trading away Davis in favor of McCollum becoming the new starting outside corner. When Todd Bowles was asked about Zyon McCollum, he said, quote, "He's a very good technician. He's very quick twitch. His understanding of the game has grown expansively. He's an unbelievable football player, and I think a lot of people are going to see that this year," end quote. This reminds me, for you longtime everydayers that have been with me and, of course, with David Harrison for years and years now, it reminds me of when Zyon McCollum's college coach was on this show, and he talked about how it may take a year or two for Zyon to fully understand the NFL game and his responsibilities, but once he does, he's going to be a great player. He talked about how it took a little while for Zyon to really grasp it in college, but as soon as things clicked, he was full steam ahead. And this is a guy I've pointed to numerous times, shut down Christian Watson in college. Christian Watson, who's being pegged as one of the up and rising wide receiver stars in the NFL. Zyon completely shut him down. Once things click in Zion's mind, now all of a sudden he doesn't doubt himself. He doesn't question things. It's pure reaction. And it also reminds me of my conversation with Antoine Winfield Jr. at training camp during Zion's rookie year. And I asked him, I asked Winfield what his thoughts were on McCollum at that stage of the process. And Winfield absolutely gushed over how smart and how crazy athletic Zyon is, and talked about how he could really be something special once he gets comfortable. Well, now Zyon is in a situation where you saw a big year 1 to year 2 growth, and you're looking for big growth from year 2 to year 3. The Bucs traded away Carlton Davis. Yes, it was a money move, but they could have made the money work if they needed to. They did it because Todd Bowles was confident in Zion's ability to be a full-time, full-season starting outside corner. And I've gone over the numbers on this show before. I'm not going to go through every single one again, but he had remarkable improvement in his second year. He went from allowing 72.7% of passes towards him to be completed down to 59.8%. He shaved over 2 yards per reception off from year 1 to year 2, dropped 3 yards per target off. Quarterback rating when targeted went from 118.7 to 91.0. went from being targeted 22 times to 92 times and still saw this kind of drop off across the board. 1 pass defensed to 9, 0 forced fumbles to 2. His missed tackle percentage dropped by 3%, while he nearly tripled his total tackles. So if the Bucs can get even slight improvement out of Zyon McCollum from year 2 to year 3, it's going to be a huge boost to this Bucs secondary. The biggest problem that they have is going to be availability. Dean has to stay healthy, and he's the one that really needs to improve over last season. His play in 2023 was absolutely terrible. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. If the money situation was a little bit different, it probably would have been Jamel Dean that got dealt instead of Carlton Davis. But, when you think about it, Dean is basically in a contract year. The Bucs have an out after this season, and if he plays the way he did last year, he's going to be gone. Then you have a situation where Zyon McCollum potentially goes from the sideline as a rookie to a situational starter his sophomore year to a starting outside corner as the cornerback 2 in year 3 to the cornerback 1 in year 4 in the end of his rookie contract. We know how much Todd Bowles likes this kid, and we've known him for some time. He was one of those chess pieces that Bowles talked about, where he has plans for all these different kinds of ways to utilize Zyon in order to not just maximize Zion's skills, but maximize the ability of the defense as a whole. There's a couple of spots on the roster where the Bucs could prove to be vulnerable, and corner is certainly one of them. Their depth there, go back to the 53-man pre-training camp roster projection on yesterday's show. But, the depth there is really solid. With that said, there's certainly questions surrounding how well and how often Dean is going to play. If Zyon can live up to and exceed his production last year, and then if these guys struggle or the injury bug hits, a weak secondary against this schedule could tank the Buccaneers season. You're talking about, a projected new aerial attack in Atlanta. For all of his faults, Derek Carr in New Orleans can put up some big time numbers. You face the Chiefs, you face the Niners, you face the Eagles, you face the Cowboys, you face some really difficult football teams. And if your secondary is struggling, the whole team is going to struggle. And it could tank the Bucs to the point that they're last place in the NFC South, which is certainly well below where they should be. Now, Nick Wright, the always popular fanboy, the talking head, he picked the Buccaneers to go from first to worst. And we're going to talk about that on tomorrow's show, because I'm never one to pass up an opportunity to point out how irrationally moronic Nick Wright can be. But I'll talk more about that tomorrow. The big thing here is this is a litmus test. And it's a litmus test to the point that the Buccaneers are either going to excel beyond expectations, or Dean is going to struggle, Zyon is going to take a step back, and the Buccaneers season could implode sooner than later if they don't get this secondary figured out. Nothing is guaranteed, and that's the message the Buccaneers offensive coordinator Liam Coen is sending. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those that aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In any given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you are looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. There are 2.5 million small businesses that use LinkedIn for hiring, so do not miss out on your opportunity. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Wrapping things up here on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, and Liam Coen knows what we all know. Competition breeds excellence. There are some guarantees on this roster. There's no doubt about that. Baker Mayfield is the starting quarterback. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are the top two receivers. Tristan Wirfs is the starting left tackle. Rachaad White is the starting running back. Antoine Winfield is the starting safety. Vita Vea, starter. Levante David, starter. Beyond that, it would be really, really smart for every other player on this team to go into the mix and go out and battle like their job depends on it, because there's a distinct possibility that it does. I've said it. Evan Klosky has said it. Most everyone that covers or follows the Buccaneers in any capacity has said it. The Graham Barton is going to be the starting center for the Buccaneers this year. Liam Coen, though, the guy calling the shots, Liam Coen is not saying it. He also appeared on the Sick podcast, and Coen was asked about Barton and incumbent center Robert Hainsey. And he said, quote, Graham will have to minimize just kind of the snafus in order for him to be able to win that job. And Hainsey has to continue to play at a consistently high level for him to win that job. It's definitely something that we have to move through, end quote. Graham Barton, Robert Hainsey, both of them, and what they need to do to win that job. So center is apparently among the position battles at training camp that we should have been talking about. Full disclosure, I still believe the Barton is the clear front runner, and unless some sort of mind-boggling collapse happens, he'll be the starter going into week one and throughout the entire season. But I love this out of Liam Coen. He doesn't want Robert Hainsey to walk into camp assuming he's the backup. He doesn't want Graham Barton walking into training camp assuming he's the starter. He wants Hainsey to be the guy fighting it out with Barton every single day, every single rep, every snap to push Graham Barton. There's also a level of complacency, even for a rookie, that could creep in and cause him to not develop or learn at the rate that the Bucs need or want him to. And honestly, if I'm Liam Coen, I'm running Barton with the ones for the first couple of days, maybe even the first full week. Then when there's an opening, when there's an opportunity where Barton has an off day, has a bad day, misses a block, misses an assignment, make the switch and put Hainsey on the field with the ones. And before you freak out, yes, I fully understand that there's risk involved with doing something like this, with playing this kind of game. And that risk lies in the mental side. But there's no doubt in my mind, number one, that Graham Barton is mentally tough enough to deal with something like that. And a move like this is only going to push him to be better. You don't want your rookie looking over his shoulder and, playing tentatively because he's scared to make a mistake out of fear of being pulled. But you have to set the precedent. You have to let him know that, look, this is potentially your job. This is not your job yet. We have a guy that has started the last 2 years, and if it weren't for really bad play, on either side of him through stretches of last season, he probably would have fared a lot better than he did, because he fared a lot better than that 2 years ago when he started for the first time. Ultimately, it sends a message. Hey, Rook, welcome to the NFL. Earn your job every day or you're going to lose it. That's the nature of this business. a lot of people say you shouldn't lose your job because of an injury, but yet it happens every single year. You practice the way you play, and if you're slacking, if you're lazy, if you're not getting it, then you're on the sideline until you earn it back. Now, do I think that Liam Coen is going to go that far? Probably not. But things are being made clear now, and I'm sure will be made clear during training camp, that no one's job is secure. You have to earn it on the field, in the film room, in the locker room, or you're going to watch somebody take it from you. Do you think Robert Hainsey was excited that the Bucs drafted Graham Barton and he knew he was probably losing his starting job? Or do you think he wants to stay the starter? Do you think Christian Zyon was thrilled about the selection of Tyke Smith? Or do you think he wants to stay the starter? What about Joe Tryon-Shoyinka and the selection of Chris Braswell? You think he was hyped about that when he had already been put on notice last offseason that he needed to take a big step forward and then didn't? He knows he is on a running clock here, that his job may be on the line, didn't get his fifth-year option, and now he has a rookie from Alabama breathing down his neck. There isn't a player in the NFL that doesn't want to be a starter. They have worked their entire lives to get to this point, and now there's one guy in between them and playing on Sundays. That's a gut punch unlike anything you or I have ever felt in our lives. But if these guys are pushing each other to be the best versions of themselves, it's only going to make the team better, and it's going to cause players to reach a level that they didn't know they had. It makes your starters better. It makes your depth stronger. It makes the collective of the team better. So I absolutely love that Liam Coen left the door open for Robert Hainsey to be the starter this year and put it on Barton. That, dude, you have to get this figured out, and you have to get it figured out quickly. Otherwise, our first-round pick is going to be sitting on the sideline, and we don't care what the fans say about it. We don't care what the media says about it. We're not handing this dude anything. He has to go out and earn it, and it's going to push someone who I still believe is going to be a perennial Pro Bowl center in the NFL to be that much better. So kudos to Liam Coen for saying that, for setting the precedent, and I cannot wait to see how he runs the offense in training camp and what he does to get the best version of these players out of them. That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Bucs. Again, make sure you're coming back tomorrow. I will have plenty to say about Nick Wright and his continued foolishness. But in the meantime, check out everything going on over at BucsNation.com. Make sure you are following on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs. Become a Locked On Bucs insider by going to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Bucs or click the link in the show notes. And finally, please make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.